I was 32 when I proposed to Jessica, the woman I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. We had been together for 5 amazing years, and everything was perfect. The venue was booked, the guests were invited, and my younger brother Daniel seemed genuinely happy to be my best man. That morning I felt nothing but excitement as I adjusted my tie, completely unaware that within hours my entire world would collapse. A single text from Jessica changed everything. Before I tell you how my brother destroyed the happiest day of my life, let me know where you are watching from in the comments, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had family betray your trust. Growing up, Daniel was always 2 steps behind me. As brothers only 2 years apart, comparisons were inevitable. But I never wanted our relationship to be competitive. I excelled in school sports, and eventually my career as an architect, while Daniel struggled to find his footing bouncing between sales jobs that never quite worked out. Despite our differences, I always supported him. When he needed money for college, I helped him out. When he got fired from his 3rd job in 2 years, I let him crash on my couch. I believed that was what brothers did for each other. Looking back, the signs of his resentment were there all along. In high school, he dated my ex-girlfriend 2 weeks after we broke up. In college, he took credit for a business plan I helped him create for a class project. Small betrayals that I brushed off as immaturity, believing he would eventually outgrow his jealousy. I met Jessica at a charity event for the Children's Hospital where she worked as a pediatric nurse. My firm had been commissioned to design a new pediatric wing, and we were seated at the same table during the fundraising dinner. She had this incredible laugh that made everyone around her smile, and when she talked about her patients, her compassion shone through every word. Our connection was immediate and deep. On our first date, we talked until the restaurant closed, and the staff had to politely ask us to leave. By the 3rd date, I knew she was special. We shared the same values, supported each other's dreams, and brought out the best in each other. Jessica loved hiking and photography, so our weekends were filled with adventures to capture the perfect sunrise or sunset. For 3 years, we built a beautiful life together. We traveled to Costa Rica and Hawaii, volunteered at animal shelters, and spent holidays with our families. Daniel met Jessica at our parents' Thanksgiving dinner. 6 months after we started dating. He was charming, of course. Daniel could always turn on the charm when needed. Jessica, always seeing the best in people, thought he was wonderful. The night I proposed, we were walking along the beach during sunset on vacation in Florida. I had the ring in my pocket and my heart in my throat. When she said yes, I felt like the luckiest man alive. We called our families from the hotel room, and everyone was thrilled, even Daniel, who volunteered to help with anything we needed for the wedding. The planning process brought Jessica so much joy. She had dreamed about her wedding since she was a little girl, and seeing her excitement as she chose flowers, tasted cakes, and found her perfect dress made me fall even more in love with her. Our families became closer during this time. My parents, Robert and Eleanor, adored Jessica, and her parents, Thomas and Margaret, welcomed me like a son. When it came time to choose my best man, I hesitated briefly. My closest friend Jack would have been the safe choice, but family obligations won out. I asked Daniel, hoping it would strengthen our bond. He acted honored and immediately threw himself into planning my bachelor party, promising it would be a night to remember. Jessica and I purchased our dream home 3 months before the wedding, a beautiful craftsman-style house with a yard big enough for the children we hoped to have. We spent weekends painting walls and shopping for furniture, envisioning our future together. The night before the wedding, we had our rehearsal dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. Everyone was in high spirits, but I noticed Daniel drinking heavily and disappearing frequently to take phone calls. My sister Sarah mentioned that he seemed off, but I was too focused on tomorrow to pay much attention. My father pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay with Daniel, but I assured him it was probably just best man nerves. If only I had been more observant. The morning of the wedding arrived with perfect weather. The groomsmen gathered at my parents' house to get ready. Jack, my college roommate Tim, and my cousins Mike and Anthony were all there, but Daniel was running late. When he finally arrived, he seemed distracted and mentioned needing to run an emergency errand before the ceremony. I was annoyed, but told him to be back in time for photos. An hour before the ceremony was set to begin, I received a frantic call from Lisa, Jessica's maid of honor and best friend since childhood. Her voice was shaking as she told me Jessica was hysterical and refusing to go through with the wedding. I tried calling Jessica immediately, but she would not answer. None of the bridesmaids were picking up either. I jumped into my car, still wearing my tuxedo pants and undershirt, and sped to the hotel where Jessica and her bridesmaids were getting ready. When I arrived, Lisa met me in the lobby. Her mascara streaked down her face. She told me Jessica had received a series of text messages with photos attached. Photos that appeared to show me with another woman at my bachelor party 2 nights earlier. There were screenshots of explicit messages supposedly between me and this woman, planning to meet up after the honeymoon. A bartender from the club had apparently reached out to Jessica directly, claiming he had witnessed everything. None of it was true. My bachelor party had been tame by most standards. We had dinner, went to a cigar bar, and ended the night with drinks at a local club. I was home by 1 a.m., and I had texted Jessica throughout the evening. The woman in the doctored photos was a cocktail waitress who had briefly sat at our table when delivering drinks. The texts were complete fabrications. When I finally made it up to Jessica's hotel suite, her father blocked the door. Thomas was a gentle, reasonable man who had welcomed me into their family, but the look in his eyes that day was pure hatred. He told me to leave before he did something he would regret. Behind him, I could hear Jessica sobbing. Her mother was on the phone, presumably calling guests to inform them the wedding was canceled. I received a text from Jessica that simply read, "Do not try to explain. I saw everything. We are done." Devastated and confused, I returned to where the groomsmen were waiting. Jack showed me the same photos Jessica had received, which someone had anonymously emailed to him as well. Looking at them more carefully, I could see they were edited, but they were convincing enough at a glance. The fake text messages included details about our relationship that only someone close to us would know. As I was trying to process what was happening, the bartender from my bachelor party called me. He sounded nervous and explained that he had been paid $500 by my brother to send those messages and photos to Jessica. He had been promised another $500 after the wedding was canceled. He was calling because he felt guilty after learning how far the deception had gone. By this time, wedding guests were arriving at the venue. My parents were frantically trying to manage the situation while I was still in shock. Rumors spread quickly. Some guests heard I had cheated others, that Jessica had left me at the altar. The humiliation was unbearable. All the deposits were lost. Gifts that had already arrived had to be returned. Our honeymoon to Italy was non-refundable, but the financial loss was nothing compared to losing Jessica and watching my reputation crumble. I confronted Daniel that evening. He was masterful in his denial, appearing genuinely shocked and concerned. He suggested perhaps one of Jessica's jealous exes was behind it, or maybe she had gotten cold feet and needed an excuse. He was so convincing that my mother believed him instantly. My father seemed unsure, and Sarah was the only one who openly questioned Daniel's innocence. The week after the canceled wedding was the worst of my life. Jessica blocked my number and all social media accounts. Her friends refused to speak to me. The engagement ring was returned to my apartment in a manila envelope with no note. Jessica's brother threatened to teach me a lesson if I tried to contact her again. Daniel played the supportive brother, offering to help me move out of the home Jessica and I had purchased together. He told extended family members and friends that he was worried about me reinforcing the narrative that I had made a terrible mistake and ruined my own life. His concern seemed so genuine that most people never questioned his version of events. As the weeks passed, the initial shock gave way to a deeper pain. The life I had planned was gone. The woman I loved thought I was a liar and a cheater. Half of my friends had taken her side. And my own brother, the architect of my destruction, was being consoled for having such a disappointment for a brother. My work began to suffer. Projects that would have once excited me now felt meaningless. I started drinking too much first, just in the evenings, but eventually during lunch breaks as well. Jessica's sister ran into me at a grocery store and made a point of turning around and walking the other way. Our community was not that large, and everywhere I went I felt judged. 3 months after the wedding that never happened, I made one final attempt to tell Jessica the truth. I wrote her a long email detailing everything I had learned about Daniel's deception. I included the confession from the bartender analysis from a photographer friend, showing how the incriminating photos had been altered, and phone records proving my whereabouts on the night in question. Her response was a brief message from her lawyer, warning me against further contact and mentioning the possibility of a restraining order. My family held a dinner at my parents' house to discuss the situation. I had hoped this meant they were finally ready to confront Daniel, but instead it turned into an intervention of sorts for me. My mother accused me of trying to blame my innocent brother for my own mistakes. Daniel sat there looking wounded and concerned occasionally, offering that he forgave me and just wanted me to get help. Only Sarah remained silent, watching the dynamic with increasing discomfort. That night, I made the decision to leave. My firm had a satellite office in Seattle across the country from our Boston home. I requested a transfer, which was approved within days. I sold the dream house at a loss, unable to bear the weight of the memories it contained. I packed only what would fit in my car and left without a proper goodbye to anyone except Sarah. My first year in Seattle was a blur of rain work and isolation. I found a small apartment downtown and threw myself into my projects at work. The physical distance helped, but the emotional wounds remained raw. I started therapy trying to understand how I could move forward when the truth remained buried. Dating felt impossible. The few times I tried, I found myself comparing every woman to Jessica or struggling to explain my trust issues without revealing the full humiliating story. Eventually, I stopped trying and accepted my solitude. Work became my salvation. I designed my best projects during this period, channeling all my pain into creativity. I won a major award for a sustainable community center design, bringing positive attention to our office and earning me a promotion. On paper, my career was thriving, but inside I remained broken. My relationship with my family fractured along clear lines. Sarah visited twice that year, staying in my guest room and helping me make my apartment feel more like a home. We spoke on the phone weekly. My parents called on holidays and birthdays, our conversations stilted and superficial. Daniel and I did not speak at all, though I heard through Sarah that he had received a promotion at his sales job and was dating someone new. My parents continued to dote on him, blind to the truth I could never prove. As the second anniversary of my canceled wedding approached, I received an invitation to the wedding of a former friend from Boston. I declined, still unable to face the community that had so quickly turned against me. That night, I broke my rule about drinking alone in my apartment and found myself looking at old photos of Jessica and me. The pain had dulled somewhat but had not disappeared. The turning point came unexpectedly. A new children's hospital was being built in Seattle, and our firm was bidding on the project. Visiting the existing facility to understand the needs better, I was reminded of Jessica's passion for helping children. Instead of running from the painful association, I volunteered to lead a program designing accessible playrooms for long-term pediatric patients. Slowly, I began rebuilding a life I never planned. I developed new friendships with colleagues who knew nothing of my past. I joined a hiking group, rediscovering the outdoor activities Jessica and I had enjoyed together, but making new memories on the spectacular trails of the Pacific Northwest. I even adopted a dog from a local shelter, a 3-legged Labrador retriever named Max, who required extra patience but gave unlimited affection. At a fundraiser for the hospital project, I met Rachel, an occupational therapist who worked with injured children. She was nothing like Jessica, with her dark curly hair and quiet intensity, but her compassion reminded me that good people still existed. After several months of friendship, I finally shared my full story with her. She was the first person in Seattle to know the truth, and her unwavering belief in me began to heal something I thought would be forever broken. It had been nearly 3 years since the day everything fell apart when I received a call from Sarah during an important work meeting. I would not normally have answered, but something told me it was urgent. Stepping into the hallway, I heard my sister's voice, tense and emotional. Daniel had been in a car accident. He was not critically injured, but had been hospitalized with a concussion and several broken ribs. While under the influence of pain medication, he had confessed everything to our mother, who happened to be sitting with him when the nurse administered the drugs. The elaborate scheme to destroy my wedding, his payments to the bartender, and an actress he had hired to pose in the photos, the technical friend who helped him create the fake text messages. All of it came pouring out in his semi-conscious state. My parents were devastated. My mother, who had so vehemently defended Daniel, was overcome with guilt. My father, who had harbored silent doubts, was angry at himself for not trusting his instincts. And Sarah, who had stood by me all along, felt vindicated but heartbroken that our family had been so thoroughly fractured. Most shocking of all, Sarah had contacted Jessica. After confirming Daniel's confession with multiple sources, including the bartender who still had the payment records, she felt Jessica deserved to know the truth. Jessica had listened in silence, and then broken down, crying, 3 years of anger and certainty washing away in an instant. I sat in the stairwell of my office building, unable to process the flood of emotions. Vindication, yes, but also a fresh wave of grief for everything that had been lost. The truth had finally emerged. But what good was it now? My life had been rebuilt from scratch. The pain had scarred over. Did I want to reopen those wounds? I requested a week of emergency leave and booked a flight to Boston for the following morning. After 3 years away, I was finally going home, though home had ceased to mean anything comforting long ago. My first stop was the hospital. Daniel was awake but groggy when I entered his room. Our parents and Sarah had stepped out to give us privacy, though I suspected they were just outside the door anxiously waiting. He looked smaller somehow, his confident facade stripped away by injury and exposure. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. Then he began to speak, his voice hoarse and broken. He admitted everything, explaining that his jealousy had built over years until it consumed him. He had always felt inferior, always in my shadow, and the thought of me having the perfect life with the perfect wife while he struggled had driven him to destroy the one thing he knew I valued most. He explained the mechanics of his plan with a detachment that chilled me. How he had befriended the bartender weeks before the bachelor party. How he had studied my texting patterns with Jessica to replicate them convincingly. How he had selected a cocktail waitress who slightly resembled Jessica's coworker, whom she had once expressed mild jealousy over. Every detail had been calculated for maximum damage. I asked him only one question: was it worth it? He had no answer. Only tears that I could not tell were from remorse or self-pity. My parents were waiting outside, my mother's eyes red and swollen, my father looking 10 years older than when I had last seen him. Their apologies came in a flood, desperate and raw. I stood there feeling nothing but a strange emptiness. The vindication should have felt better than this. Jessica had asked to see me. Sarah gave me her new address, a small apartment across town from where we had once planned to build our life. I went the next day, not sure what I expected, or even what I wanted. She opened the door looking just as beautiful as I remembered, though her eyes held a wariness that had not been there before. We sat at her kitchen table, two strangers who had once known each other completely. She had prepared a detailed timeline of what had happened, from her perspective, how the evidence had seemed so overwhelming, how her brother and parents had convinced her not to hear me out, how the legal threat had been their idea, not hers. I listened quietly, understanding her actions, but also recognizing that something fundamental had broken between us that day. Even with the truth now known, the ease and trust we had once shared could never be fully restored. She had believed the worst of me, without giving me a chance. I had spent 3 years rebuilding myself from the ground up. We were different people now. When she tentatively suggested that perhaps we could try again, I surprised myself with my response. I told her gently but firmly that too much had changed. The Kenneth she had loved no longer existed, reshaped by pain and betrayal. The Jessica I had loved had been replaced in my mind by someone who had not trusted in what we had built together. It was the first time in the whole ordeal that I felt completely in control. Not a victim, not a wronged man seeking justice, but someone making a clear choice about his own future. It hurt to see her tears, but I knew I was making the right decision for both of us. I spent the remainder of my visit confronting long-avoided truths. I told my parents that their willingness to believe the worst of me and their years of enabling Daniel's behavior had caused damage that could not be easily repaired. I would work on forgiveness, but it would take time and effort on all our parts. I took practical steps to protect myself going forward. I legally changed my surname, separating myself from the family legacy that had caused me so much pain. I sold my shares in our family business, which Daniel had been managing during my absence. I insisted on family therapy sessions as a condition of maintaining contact with any of them. The intervention for Daniel was long overdue. Our parents finally acknowledged his pattern of manipulation and jealousy, setting clear boundaries and requirements for his continued support. He would need to complete a therapy program and make amends to both Jessica and me before being welcomed back into family events. Whether he would follow through remained to be seen. Jessica returned a box of my belongings that she had kept all these years, books of sweatshirt photographs from happier times. We said goodbye on her doorstep, both understanding that some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt, only mourned and remembered. Before leaving Boston, I called Rachel in Seattle. Hearing her voice centered me, reminding me of the life I had created for myself, imperfect but authentic. She asked when I was coming home, and the word home no longer pulled me in two directions. Seattle was home now. My answer was simple: tomorrow. On the flight back, I reflected on how truth does not always bring the healing we expect. Sometimes it merely confirms that what is broken cannot be fixed, and that moving forward requires acceptance rather than restoration. My brother had stolen 3 years of my life with his deception, but I would not allow him to claim any more. The most important lesson I learned was that while blood ties run deep, they should never bind you to people who bring destruction rather than love. Sometimes family is who you choose, not who chose you. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away from what once seemed irreplaceable and build something new from the ashes. I returned to Seattle with clarity I have never known before. The past no longer haunts me because I have finally accepted that it cannot be changed, only learned from. What happens with my family going forward is no longer the center of my story. I am writing new chapters now with people who have earned their place in my life. What would you do if you discovered a family member had deliberately sabotaged your happiness? Would you try to rebuild those relationships or create boundaries to protect yourself? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming betrayal and building resilience. Share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes walking away is the strongest choice you can make. Thank you for listening. And remember, the family you choose can be stronger than the family you were born into.